Greg lived along the eastern coast of Australia, where he routinely walked the same path with his dog, Sparky. These walks had become a cherished routine for both of them, providing a respite from the demands of daily life. Greg enjoyed the quiet mornings, taking in the serenity before and after work, while Sparky relished the opportunity to explore the vibrant wildlife and stunning scenery along their route. Over the years, Greg had become accustomed to Sparky's playful energy and curiosity. The dog often tugged on his leash, eager to investigate new scents and sights. So it was no surprise when, one fateful morning, Sparky's nose caught an intriguing scent, and he began pulling with more determination than usual. Sparky was well-trained, and Greg knew that a gentle tug on the leash would usually bring him back to heel. But this time, Sparky was unusually insistent, his nose firmly directed towards the source of the scent. Recognizing Sparky's resolve, Greg decided to indulge his curiosity. He unclipped the leash, allowing Sparky to dart towards a nearby cluster of trees. A moment of panic seized Greg as he watched Sparky run off. Where was he going? Would he stop at the trees or keep running until he reached the ocean? Greg quickened his pace, following Sparky's path and keeping a close eye on him. As Greg approached the trees, he noticed Sparky's heightened interest in the area furthest from their usual route. The dog ran circles around the trees, sniffing each one with increasing intensity. Greg called Sparky, but the dog ignored him, focused entirely on something hidden among the tree roots. Greg knew he had to investigate further. Kneeling beside Sparky, Greg examined the ground but saw only dirt and sticks. Puzzled, he clipped the leash back onto Sparky's collar, ready to resume their walk. However, Sparky remained stubbornly rooted to the spot, refusing to move. Greg's frustration grew, but so did his curiosity. For the second time, Greg crouched down, this time with more determination. He used the flashlight on his phone to illuminate the area, carefully moving twigs and leaves aside. Suddenly, Sparky barked, startling Greg and drawing his attention to a small pink object partially buried in the dirt. Greg reached out and gently picked it up, discovering it was not an inanimate object but a tiny living creature. Cradled in Greg's palm was a miniature rodent-like animal, its delicate body barely visible against his skin. Greg's mind raced. What was this tiny being doing here, alone and vulnerable? Sparky watched intently, his tail wagging as if to say, "See, I told you it was important." Realizing the urgency of the situation, Greg decided to cut their walk short and head home. He had no idea how long the little creature would survive on its own, and leaving it there seemed unthinkable. Carefully, he placed the tiny animal in his pocket, ensuring it was secure but comfortable. Sparky trotted alongside Greg, seemingly proud of his discovery. Back at home, Greg set up a makeshift habitat for the tiny creature, using a small box and some soft fabric. He quickly researched, trying to identify the animal and determine the best way to care for it. After some searching, he discovered it was a baby marsupial, likely a sugar glider, that had somehow become separated from its mother. Determined to give the baby glider a fighting chance, Greg contacted a local wildlife rescue organization. They advised him on how to care for the animal until they could send someone to pick it up. For the next few hours, Greg and Sparky kept a watchful eye on their tiny guest, ensuring it stayed warm and hydrated. When the wildlife rescue team arrived, they commended Greg for his quick thinking and Sparky for his keen nose. They explained that the baby glider would be taken to a rehabilitation center, where it would be cared for and eventually released back into the wild. Greg felt a deep sense of relief and gratitude. Sparky's persistence had saved a life. In the days that followed, Greg couldn't help but feel a renewed appreciation for his loyal companion. Their walks continued, but now with an added sense of purpose. Greg realized that these quiet moments with Sparky were more than just a routine. They were opportunities to connect with the world around them in profound and unexpected ways. Every time they passed the cluster of trees where Sparky had made his discovery, Greg would pause, remembering the tiny life they had rescued. Sparky, ever the curious explorer, would sniff the air, perhaps hoping for another adventure. And Greg, with a smile, would give his faithful friend a pat on the head, grateful for the bond they shared and the unexpected moments of wonder their walks could bring. As Greg tugged on Sparky's leash to lead him toward home, the sweet dog lowered his snout to Greg's palm, checking on his new friend. Once they arrived home, Greg laid out a soft blanket for the tiny creature to rest on. He then called his workplace, explaining he would be a few hours late because he had a life to save. Next, Greg started calling nearby animal clinics to determine the best course of action. Fortunately, his efforts led him to connect with the Australian Zoo Wildlife Hospital in Queensland. The Wildlife Hospital staff quickly requested that Greg bring the little creature in as soon as possible. Greg wasted no time. Upon arriving at the hospital, veterinary technicians were ready and waiting to accept the tiny creature into their care. The professionals assured Greg that he had handled the situation very well. They examined the creature and found it to be relatively healthy, despite weighing less than a gram. The staff explained that if the creature had been exposed to the wild for much longer, it would almost certainly have died due to its young age and separation from its mother. The hospital warned Greg that, despite appearing healthy, the creature's survival was still uncertain. Young animals needed their mothers in ways that humans could not replicate. Greg understood and asked the hospital to keep him updated on the little one's progress. He said goodbye to the tiny creature and headed home to Sparky. In the following weeks, Greg anxiously watched for updates on the wildlife hospitals. Though he had only known the creature briefly, he felt a deep concern for its well-being. Greg had always had a soft spot for animals, both wild and tame, and the young age of this creature made him particularly worried about its chances of survival. Eventually, Greg learned that the little creature was doing very well, thanks to the round-the-clock care provided by the hospital staff. The tiny animal was also gaining popularity on the internet, with more and more people tuning in daily to witness its miraculous recovery. Greg's actions had not only saved a life, but had also brought joy and hope to people worldwide. Still, questions remained about the creature's long-term recovery. It wasn't a typical pet like a dog or a cat, nor was it a common Australian animal like a snake, kangaroo, or spider. In fact, this lovely creature wasn't dangerous at all. It was a baby feather-tailed glider, the world's smallest marsupial, distinguished by the pouches on their stomachs where they carry their young, similar to kangaroos. The staff at the animal hospital were initially shocked, but then confirmed the identification. They explained that feather-tail gliders carry their young in these pouches for the first portion of their lives. Anyone could instantly fall in love with such an adorable little pink creature. When Sparky showed his affection by gently nudging the tiny glider with his nose, Greg realized the perfect name for the feather-tail glider, Boop. If Sparky had not forced Greg to investigate under that tree, he would have walked right past Boop, unaware of its existence. Thanks to a caring dog and a receptive owner, a life was saved that day. Sadly, Boop could not thrive as a pet, and Greg could not adopt him. Boop was born in the wild, and it was best for him to live there. Boop wouldn't be happy in a domesticated environment, a fact the hospital staff explained to Greg. The hospital promised that both Greg and Sparky would be invited to attend when Boop could safely be released back into his natural habitat. The heartwarming story of Greg, Sparky, and Boop touched many lives, and people were grateful for Greg's kind gesture and the remarkable journey that followed. Boop's story continued to inspire many as updates were shared. Greg and Sparky became minor celebrities in their community, recognized for their role in saving Boop. Every walk they took along their familiar path now held a special significance, a reminder of the life they had saved and the bond they shared. The day of Boop's release finally arrived, filled with excitement and a touch of sadness. Greg, Sparky, and a crowd of well-wishers gathered at the release site. The wildlife hospital staff carefully opened Boop's enclosure, allowing him to scamper into the wild. Cheers and applause filled the air as Boop climbed a tree, exploring his new home. Greg felt a sense of fulfillment and joy as he watched Boop disappear into the foliage. Sparky wagged his tail, seemingly understanding the significance of the moment. Greg knew that while Boop would thrive in the wild, the experience had left an indelible mark on him and Sparky. Their bond had deepened, and their walks would forever be a testament to the life they had saved together.